comes. And there he is.
Well, hello there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. For some reason, it doesn't allow me to connect my headphones, but
Oh,
nonetheless.
okay, I should probably do the same, but.
Oh, there it goes. I just had to reconnect.
Okay.
Perfect.
You good?
Yeah. How are
You hear me?
you?
I hear. I'm great, thank you. I am great. I'm so happy to be here. And I see some
Yes,
people
likewise.
joined, so I'm going to get started. I got a lot of questions from you that have come from people who asked me. People may ask the questions on their own after in the chat. We're going to leave some time for that when we're done talking, but I might cover a lot of ground here because I have lots of questions. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. And my name is Goldberg, and I'm the founder of Bigvision community in New York City. And I come from, Bigvision is a nonprofit. I come from the for-profit world, which I've been in for 35 years. But after losing my son Isaac to an accidental drug overdose, I decided to do something to help other young adults like Isaac. He was 23 years old, and he really struggled with his sobriety, really struggled to find ways to have fun again, to find a community of people to be with who understood him, who didn't judge him, and, you know, live his best life just without substances. And so that's why I started Bigvision. And Bigvision is a community of young adults in recovery, trying to live their best lives, live a recovery lifestyle. And we just recently purchased a space in New York City in Midtown, which is going to become our first clubhouse, which we're very excited about. And we'll be able to have many different types of events there, including events that we're doing now. In addition, it'll be a sober event space. So it's going to be quite amazing. Hopefully we have a kitchen. We can do some cooking stuff with Chris. So it's very exciting. This has been my dream since I started Bigvision. And I feel like it's, you know, I mean, I know it's happening, which is amazing. So now a little bit about our guest, Chris. So, I mean, I'll let you tell more. I'm just, you know, I have your bio, which I'll just read a little bit about you, but we'll get into it and people will then get to know you better. So Chef Chris Arellanes is corporate executive chef of KYU restaurants. It's a wood-fired Asian restaurant concept with locations in Miami, Mexico City, and New York City. And if you haven't been there, I've been there a couple of times. It's quite amazing. He has an impressive resume, which includes top honors from Le Cordon Bleu and working at some of the finest restaurants, including Per Se, 11 Madison Park, and Nick's, which actually I didn't know you were from there. It was one of my favorite places before it closed. And you have like a great history, a great story about, you know, how you started getting into the food business, which I'm going to let you tell more of. And your unwavering commitment to creating menus that both excite diners and gratify the body and planet led him to KYU, whose sustainable ethos, high quality cuisine, and upholding of genuine hospitality made him feel at home. And it makes everybody feel at home when you go there. So that's fantastic. And that's your story in the food world. But obviously we're interested in that and how, you know, you and your recovery journey. So I'm just going to start, I mean, with a question, and that is, how did you know, what brought you to the place that you had to make a commitment to sobriety, or what actually finally motivated you to make a change in your life?
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be honest with you, there's so much to unpack from that question. I think, you know, if you were to you know, kind of narrow it down, I think loss, as a lot of people who are wanting to get into recovery or going through recovery or, you know, thinking about sobriety as a whole, there's typically some form of loss, as you can relate. And, you know, I think there was so much kind of unraveling, things that I didn't even notice were unraveling in front of me, that I just had to take a step back, and I had to say, like, oh wow, like there actually has been so much due to my substance abuse or due to my you know, inconsistencies of you know, using, that I had to like actually assess it and say, I need to stop. And you know, it's, for me, sobriety hasn't been like, okay, I'm done, never gonna drink again. It's, I'm gonna not drink today, and today I'm gonna be sober. And as the days goes on, you continue down that path, and so that way I'm not setting myself up for failure. I'm actually able to achieve these goals and just take it one day at a time. And the people that I sponsor on the record and off the record, and I explained this to them. I had a conversation with someone today. I said, we need to change the narrative. And that's what I had to do. And there's different levels of loss. My grandmother passing away, a job not wanting to promote me, divorce, so loss of money. There's so many different things, loss that can have the identity of the word loss, or to lose. And that's what really helped kind of catapult me into my recovery very quickly. And then I've been assessing it every day, how to get stronger. It doesn't get easier. I just get stronger. And that's kind of, been my path and the guiding light to allow me to help myself and in return help others. So that's kind of my journey so far.
That's great. So I know a lot of people who don't understand this. They think that you get sober, you give up the drugs, you give up the alcohol, and it's like, okay, you go back to your life and you're good to go. And they don't realize even when you go into treatment, which could be 30 days or 60 days, that is just the beginning. That is the start. That gets you to where you need to start your life. And then every day it's, I hate to be so cliche, but one day at a time. It's for everything in life. And I get that that's how you live your life. And, a lot of people who are not, what do they call, normies, don't really understand that. So it's important to, to bring that to people's attention. So was there one incident or something that motivated your decision, or somebody that offered to help you, or something that made that happen? It was just you said to yourself, my life is, unmanageable.
Yeah, I think there's always so many things that kind of add up, and until you're able to comprehend those things, you don't really realize that there's been many scenarios throughout your journey or throughout your life that have kind of led to this this moment. And I lost my grandmother, who was kind of like my guiding light. Didn't really realize how valuable she was for my life. And then that's kind of when the spiraling started to happen. My now ex-wife, she was ready to part ways, and I was very much trapped in this vicious cycle of I have a good job, I'm a successful up and coming chef, I have good money, I have a home, and I was very blinded by, as you said, the norm and what I thought was good and healthy, and come to find out when I got on the other side of it that there was a lot of toxicity building up. And I was a big culprit of that. I was feeding it, and I've been a very big advocate of the balance of good and evil, of light and dark, and you need to have the both in order to really understand the world as a whole, and what true enlightenment and true compassion really means. And I've ridden that line for a big part of my life. And so it wasn't just one thing, it was many accumulating things and lessons, not so much issues, but lessons that kept happening, that I was so caught up in the monotony of the days, or the months, and then which turned into years, that I wasn't able to actually realize what was happening. And I've always been very much of I'm a Scorpio, so I'm really able to stop something. If I don't want to do something, I'm just kind of done with it, and I move on. Not from a transactional perspective, but more so of an emotional, or what am I getting out of this that's benefiting me? And I started to get rid of the FOMO, and I started getting rid of the toxic relationships, and I started just to kind of weed out these things that were really pigeonholing me into this toxic narrative, and that was not allowing me to succeed or to grow. And I'm still going through that. I'm 5 years sober in August, and I'm still battling those emotions. I'm still having those semi-insecurities of like, you know, not necessarily, not that I make the right decision, but like, how do I navigate this journey? You know, I'm battling these emotions from a friend's perspective or a relationship or a professional perspective of things that I would normally suppress with substance. And I've shared this a lot, you know, and it always kind of circles back around to loss, and always circle back around to like that enlightening moment of something drastic that had to happen in my life in order for me to make a change. And that's kind of like what's been helping me continue to push forward and shed my journey with other people.
Right. Now, question for you, because I remember when my son Isaac, before he passed away, he was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and one of his sponsors came to visit him in the hospital and said, I said, Isaac was doing so well. I don't get it. Like, he never looked better. He had a job. He had a new apartment. Like, everything in his life was kind of falling into place. And he said to me, and he was also, obviously, he was in the rooms also. He was Isaac's sponsor. So he said, we don't do so well when things are going our way. We live much better in chaos. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I mean, in my industry, you know, we yes, more than, I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole on the word chaos for sure. You know, and I won't go too deep, but absolutely. And most artists in general thrive in some form of chaos, and everybody could be an artist. You know, it's not limited to the singular word of art or artistry. It circumferences so much of what our world is based on, and that's any industry, any ethnicity, any age group, anything can be art if you look at it. And within art is always chaos, and especially in the hospitality world, we thrive off chaos. We're masochists. We're very much like 16-hour days and weeks on end, and you know, living in this kind of like delusional world of you know, some forms of anarchy, and like this, just like we're fighting each other for this end cause, and it's just like, you know, and that's why a lot of people are give me 1 second, just blasting on the music. They're ready to open. They're just like, oh, we got to get open. And so, you know, it's kind of one of those situations, you know, that I was sharing with somebody today is like, how do we control the chaos? There is chaos everywhere. And so how do we minimize the chaos and understand how to deflect the positivity, absorb the chaos, as long as you can deal with it and channel it from a positive and compassionate perspective, and turn that chaos into structure, into being a little bit more methodical and proactive. And that's what I'm trying to do, because I thrive in chaos. I like skydiving. I go skydiving all the time. I like working long hours. I'm covered in tattoos, you know, like there's always going to be chaos in my life. But how do you kind of mitigate that chaos? And we talked a little bit about it, you know, of just like channeling the energy, and, you know, also a better understanding people and getting to know somebody and not judging a book by its cover, and having patience with one another. And all these things are very important, you know. So I can definitely relate with that, especially around substance and abuse. It's chaos.
Now, when you got sober, did you worry that you might lose your creative edge? Because sometimes you're gonna have artists, and it's like, you know, they're drinking or doing drugs. You know, you see these in movies and stuff like that, and it's like that's when they're most creative, when they're the highest that they can be. You know what I'm saying? Did you like worry about that and think you might lose your creative edge once you were no longer using substances?
You know, I don't. That's a difficult thing to say, because my mind doesn't really work that way.
Okay.
I'm always looking for the next, I'm always looking how to grow and better myself. And, you know, the one thing that I was concerned about when I got sober was that FOMO aspect, and how can I be on everybody else's level when being social? And like, if everybody's up here and I'm down here, am I still myself? Am I still being true to myself? And am I still being honest, with who I truly am? That's been my biggest struggle into 5 years of sobriety. And I think that's what Bigvision really circumferences, and we can get more into that, just about, having fun and going out and socializing and being active and interacting with the communities, and while also, realizing that it's okay to be sober. And the pandemic really helped us with that, really allowed us to come to an understanding that health and wellness is the most important thing in our lives. And it doesn't have to be pigeonholed around sobriety, but just in moderations. Take care of yourself, be conscious. I've been to a handful of Bigvision events now, and I've brought in some people that they're not sober, but they're in control. And they just love the fact that they can be around people that are better understanding of oneself. They're patient. They're in the community. They care. They're nurturing. There's other things to do than just to go sit at a bar or go restaurant hop or whatever the case may be, or bar hop, And so, when I got sober, it excelled my career. It brought light into my career. And I've always been very understanding that change is difficult, and change takes time and patience. And in order to hit change head on, you have to be willing, and you have to want to, accept the change. And sobriety was a change. And so I just hit it full force, and I was like, this is the day that I'm going to live in today. Let's see how we can approach tomorrow when we get there. And I want to be the best. I want to be the best chef in the world. I want to have restaurant groups. I want to have several restaurants. I want to have nonprofits and recovery groups. And there's this portfolio that I want to build. And being sober has opened up those doors for me, or is opening up those doors for me.
Well, it certainly brought us together. So I'm very grateful for that, because I think we're going to do amazing things together. So I feel that people who are in recovery are actually heroes, people who, it's not an easy thing in this world to make that decision when you're really struggling and you have, addictions. It's very, very difficult to make that decision to go the other direction and, be different, because everybody will ask the question, why are you not drinking? Why are you not getting high with me? Why, because that was what you were doing before. And it's difficult. And there's always been a stigma. And I know with Isaac, it was really hard for him to tell people that he was sober because he was ashamed. But that was 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Today, I feel like people like you are such an inspiration because you're successful, you're open about it, you're able to help people and talk about it and bring it to the light. It's amazing, so I think you're doing this, and you're being like, I think it's very inspiring to be able to find people like you. Not everybody's like that. So I hope you appreciate that.
And I really appreciate you saying that. I think, one thing that a message I would want to share with people is, I'm not ashamed of my past. And although I was faced with, issues and problems, that we all have them, and we all, I've faced many insecurities with getting sober that I would have never faced if I wasn't sober. And, I'm able to have this dialogue with myself on a day-to-day basis of how I can get better, and in return help others. And if I wasn't sober, that conversation wouldn't be happening. It would be all about me. I'd be being selfish. I would be, I'd be very much, and that's just what works for me. What works for me may not work for other people, but it's very eye-opening for me to see how many people in the world are still kind of coming out. we had this big social change during the pandemic, which was much needed. We had the LGBTQ community and everything blossoming, and everybody realizing the acceptance of one and oneself, and that it's okay. And sober people play a big role in that, because I think that sober people 10 years ago, as you were saying, were very judged, and it was very taboo. It's like, oh, you must have a problem. You're a drug addict because you're sober. And now it's like, oh, you're sober? How'd you do it? Like, what? Whoa. Like, is it because of like personal issues, or is it, I'm so curious. Like, I've been actually not drinking for a month, just because I wanted to see the health benefits. And now it's because in this positive narrative of like, people are more intrigued and more involved, and there's not a lot of people being vocal about it that are actually in recovery. And yeah, there's the inpatient, outpatient, there's Bigvisions, there's all of these and that's fantastic, and we're getting bigger and we're becoming a much larger community, but there's really a very small number of individual people with small or large platforms who have been sober for a long time that are still in fear to come out and to talk about it and share with the world. And that's what I want to be. I want to change that. And I want to say, it's okay, let's talk about it.
I completely agree with you. I'm seeing a lot of celebrities who are like saying, I made a commitment to be sober, not to drink for 3 months. I think Katy Perry, who just made that, announced that, and that's great, but the people that Bigvision works with, most of these people cannot have a drink. It's not so much a choice. They cannot, because it will lead them down a very, very bad road, and they will not survive it. So it's a matter of life and death. And I understand people just saying, yeah, I'm going to try it out for size. And that's great. But I agree with you. I want to see those people who've been living this lifestyle and doing it for years, and then, relapsing, coming back, whatever it is, just finding a way to live their life again, to be more open about it. It's happening more. I love to see more with that. I 100% agree with you, because that helps people when they see that and they're like, oh my God, if he can do it, who was that came out? Somebody recently, an actor came up with that, and he's been sober for like 40 years. I'll think of who it was. Anyway. I mean,
there's so many of them, and they're coming out of the woodworks now, because they're like, oh, this is accepted. Okay, let's talk about this. And I want people to really know my journey, because it also helps. It gives you a little edge, and it gives you a little bit of an identity, and it allows people to get to really know you, and it allows you to be vulnerable. And people hate vulnerability. They do not like to be vulnerable. They want to be surface. Things are transactional. They want to make sure that there's this facade and there's this like false reality and smoke and mirrors, because that's what society has done to us, at least in my personal opinion. And I grew up on a Buddhist commune. I was gentrified and around all different ethnicities and sexualities, and at birth I was accepted into this community from all over the world, and I didn't really know of anything really outside of that until I got out of I knew, because these people were involving me and bringing me up to speed with the cultural issues and the social issues and things like that, but nobody was talking about it like outside of my bubble. And that's, I think, what has really given me the strength to do what I'm doing now, because I can talk about it, and I can be like, yeah, I was a meth addict by the time I was 13 years old, and I struggled with distribution and manufacturing of meth until I was 19, and like, this is serious. Like, these small town Midwest, it doesn't matter where, are struggling with these things, and there's nobody to provide resources, and like, there is, but they're limited. And we need people's help, and we need funding, and we need, and so that's, and, it's slightly an uphill battle, but also at the same time, I think things are getting a lot better, because people are opening up and being vulnerable, as I had said.
I agree, although today there's one thing that I will say that's not getting easier, and that's the drugs that are out there today are more dangerous than they ever were. So it could be like one and done. You try it once, it's laced with fentanyl, and you die from it. And everything is laced with fentanyl, and now xylazine. That's a whole different IG.
The zombie drug.
Yeah, I mean, there's scary stuff out there. So, better not to start with it, better not to try it, because You have no idea what you're dealing with today. It's
And
not
I
like
think,
the drugs of old.
yeah, and I think that's, it's, I don't want to upset anybody, but that might be a blessing in disguise. And now Narcan is obviously can be,
More available.
yeah, available over the counter, which is incredible. We actually
Yep.
teach our team how to administer
Oh,
Narcan because we have a
good.
methadone clinic behind the restaurant, and I've witnessed 2 people overdosing, and I've actually administered Narcan. So, like,
Wow.
yeah, which is really intense. But the realization of it is what you just said, and that's what I share with my team. I was like, that little bag of blow that you've been buying every other weekend for the last few years, that's not a big deal, and you just go out to the club, and that may kill you now.
Yeah.
So I would
It's
highly
scary.
suggest you stay away from that. And then they're like, oh shit, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, it's scary and it's unfortunate and people need to be educated on it, but like, it's now really a life or death situation. This isn't the 80s and the 90s anymore where the stuff was just there. People were having fun and, living that hippie life, and like, it's no longer like that.
No,
It's synthetic
scary.
and it's, yeah. So
I just want to put it out there. If anybody wants to ask questions, we have a couple more minutes. You could put some questions in the chat. I still have more questions, but we'll go a few more minutes. One of the questions I wanted to know, I mean, you said you grew up in a Buddhist commune. Does spirituality play a role in your recovery? And if it doesn't, that's fine. I'm just curious if it does. It doesn't.
Oh, yeah. One thing about me is I'm very black and white. I'm very transparent. I just,
Yes.
I try to be mindful. I don't want to upset anybody, but, I was immersed into the Buddhist philosophy or religion at 1 year old, and that was my way of life until I was 18, and then got out on my own. And so I have a little bit of a wall up sometimes when it comes to religion as a whole. I believe in a higher power. I believe that there's somebody up there supporting us and nurturing us and guiding us, and that can be any sort of entity or deity, or there is something there that helps us. But I do have a tendency to kind of shed away from the overall religious aspects of sobriety, like AA and things like that. I do support it. I send some of my sponsors there. I'm very much like, listen, try it because it may work for you. But it sometimes it doesn't work for me. It could be a little overwhelming sometimes, and I just try to be mindful of that because I think it can be triggering.
Okay. And what could you name 3 things for me that you do now instead of getting high? Things that you've replaced that with, if that's a thing for you. But it has to be.
Skydiving. Okay. I'll be a licensed skydiver, and my cooking. I'll be a dad in July. So my fiance and getting married. Yep. Amazing. So definitely her. And my career, I'm really focused on building this portfolio in the restaurant group and expanding and, having my kids be stable and supported so I can leave a legacy. That's my biggest thing.
Amazing. And here's a question. What or who is your biggest support while you were getting sober?
What or who was my biggest support? I wish I could say my mom or my dad, but I don't have a close relationship with them. My biggest support was myself and my therapist. My therapist was probably my lifeline. All the substances I've gone through in my life, I've been able to advertently quit myself and step away from, which is not for everybody. And I'm not sitting here saying that you can do that. I think that you need to find support where is best suited for you and where you are through your addiction or through your disease. I think that has to be talked about. But for me at that time was loving myself and realizing that I'm better than this and I can be stronger than this and I can help people through my experiences and through my recovery. And so I took a year and I practiced celibacy. I quit caffeine. I got a therapist. I put all my time and energy into work, and I just rose to the ranks. I got into a corporate role in R&D. I started opening restaurants in the West Coast and in Florida and in Charleston, and you know, the world just kind of opened because I started to love myself more, and I started to have patience with myself, and I started also just overall changing that narrative. So I think my biggest support was my heart and myself, and then my therapist.
Well, yeah, that's key. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, I know for Isaac, one of the things, he was good looking and funny and just like an amazing kid, a good athlete, but for some reason he could never learn to love himself. And that was really his biggest downfall of everything. He didn't love himself. I can't figure out why, and he couldn't get to that place. So that was, that was really tough. So I know that is a very big key for people.
Yeah.
Now,
And it's not an easy journey.
no, for anybody, no matter what you're going through in life,
Yeah.
it's not easy.
Yeah. And just for you guys that are listening, and you know, to love yourself it's a really big statement. It's really broad, and you can start really small, you know, by something like, you know, maybe not smoking a pack of cigarettes, or putting down, you know, maybe not drinking a whole pot of coffee, or, you know, maybe eating that banana that you've bought but you never eat it. You know, little things like that, small steps, small gradual steps. It might seem insignificant, but they add up. And then you start really getting into this repetition. We're creatures of habit. We like to repetition. We like to have routines. And so it's very much set up healthy routines for yourself, and start small. Go to the gym once a month. Start once a month. You're like, what is that going to do? But it's still creating a habit. And as habitual people, and, you know, people that have good and bad habits, you know, it's really important to, you know, somebody just posted, accept the flaws, and realize that you're not perfect. And that's really important. I love what she just said. Sober is the new cool, you know, and it's really important. So
I guess you just answered my last question, which was, what would you say to somebody? What would you typically say to somebody? Let's say somebody who's on here now who's struggling. What would you say to offer them hope? I kind of think that answered it, but you may have a different answer for that.
yeah, this is, you know, this can be a tough question. I think honesty is really key here. You got to find what it's tough, because you got to find what works best for you, and sometimes that can be very challenging. And it's creating good habits, and it's cutting out the toxicity in your life and changing your own narrative. It's easy to sit here and say love yourself, but it's important. Sometimes you have to be selfish, and you have to learn this kind of selfishness in order to heal. And in order to heal, you need to remove those things in your life that are triggering. Sometimes it's cutting friends out. Sometimes it's unfortunately cutting family out. You know, creating healthy habits, like I said, eating better, fitness, maybe getting out of the job that you're in right now that is just completely draining you. And you know, you have a job now. You can find another job. You know, if you've worked this hard to get to where you are. And there's people out there to support you, and it's okay to ask for help. That's really important. You can ask for help. So,
Amen to that. Yes. So I think we're going to, it's 4:36 now. I don't want to keep people too long. And I think you got to open the restaurant because people are
I
pounding
do,
at
yes.
the door.
I can
So
feel them behind my ear,
yeah,
like, okay.
we feel them too. So I want to thank you for joining us. So again, Q Restaurants, you're on Lafayette Street. Amazing. And by the way, amazing plant-based foods, because I know the restaurant's amazing because I know people who go there and say they love the fried chicken. And I'm like, well, I don't eat fried chicken, but everything I ate there was delicious and amazing. And it was all plant-based. So check that out, and check out Bigvision, Community Bigvision NYC for all of our upcoming events. We're constantly having events, you know, in our new space and on the outside. We just did, what was it, paintball the other night. I know, Chris, you were there. And
Yes, it was a blast.
Yep. So anyway, thanks to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Chris. Love you. Big
Yes.
hug, even though I can't
Love you
do that
too.
in
Thank
person.
you.
And I'll see you soon. Have a great
Thank you, everybody, for
weekend.
joining, and thank you for having me, Eve. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.